How you doing? Phil, do I have any roti in my beard?
No, you look great.
Good. The reason I ask because today we're in a little neighborhood known as Flatbush, Brooklyn, and we're going to do a little tour of this place. Man, this place is amazing. You guys are going to love this. Tons of history, so rich and diverse. So much cool stuff to do and learn about. Before we start, Phil, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great, man.
That's good to hear. It's good to have you.
Yeah, glad to be back.
You're a good man. Before we start, also to like and subscribe, do the whole Patreon. Please check out the Patreon. It's a huge help. That's how I fund these things, all those. And you know what? You're not going to do any of those things. Maybe just tell a friend, you know? Tell a friend. Let's do old word of mouth. That's not just a ludicrous album. It's an actual way to, you know, get stuff out. Remember that album, Phil?
Yeah, it was a good album.
It was a good album. All right, anyways, I'm digressing, guys. We're going to do Flatbush today, man. Ton of history to cover. I'm not going to ramble any longer. You ready to do this, Phil?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning, everybody. In front of an old church, we'll get to that. But first of all, land here was bought from the Canarsie and the Lenape Indians in 1630s. And then here in what is today Flatbush, you had one of the first of 6 original towns of the Dutch. This one was known as Midwoot. I've talked about these Dutch towns before. There's 6 of them. Brooklyn was one of them. Brooklyn, whatever. And it actually swallowed up the others eventually, but this was one of them, 1651, Midwoot. It was all this area that eventually became Flatbush. I'm actually standing in front of the Reformed Dutch church here in Flatbush. Pretty little church. This has actually been a church here since 1662. This building has been here since the 1790s, which is wild. Still have the little freaking graveyard there with the, you know, Dutch people buried there. And the name Flatbush actually comes from the Dutch. It was actually Flakkebos. Flakkebos. That's actually how you pronounce it. You got to do the little squat. Not like the beautiful American English accent. Anyways, it was Flakkebos, and that was anglicized to Flatbush. And this church was actually ordered to be started out by a man named Peter Stuyvesant. Hey, you guys know that guy? You know who that is, Phil? You know it by now.
Yeah, he was a landowner, right?
No, man, he was the freaking Director General of the Dutch West India Company.
Oh.
He's like a peg leg guy.
My mistake.
Jesus, Phil, you gotta pay attention. We've done like 1,000 of these things. I feel like I failed as a teacher. Anyways, you know, Peter Stuyvesant, the guy, you know, he had a peg leg, he hobbled around. What he lacked in legs, he made up for in hard work and, you know, bigotry, but he was a pretty effective leader. He ordered the building of this church, etc., and it's been here since then. So the graveyard actually has, you know, graves from people going back as 1754, which is pretty wild. In fact, the people who were rich got buried in the basement. Just throw them in the basement, because that way they don't get robbed and their graves don't get robbed. Interesting fact, also like a block away, there was an African burial ground for the slaves. That's another thing about this neighborhood. A lot of slaves here. Because Brooklyn was a lot of farms, remember, it was the first, I guess, suburb of New York ever, New Amsterdam, suburb of New Amsterdam, you had lots of slaves working the land. So, in fact, in the census of 1738, there had about 529 inhabitants and then 129 slaves. So that's a good amount of people. That's a good amount of percentage. So that African burial ground, like most, has been built over, unfortunately. I talk about this because it's happened multiple times. I talk about this in my slavery and racism video. You can check that one out. Yeah, it's a real pick-me-up, I know, but you know, this is history, you gotta learn it. If you wanna, you know, study up on the top 5 Spanish, Taiwanese fusion brunch spots in New York, there's like 20 videos on that. Learn some history, how about that? All right, anyways, also an important thing to keep in mind is all the Dutch influence here is important, because the Dutch influence in New York is kind of what separates it from other parts of New England and the Northeast, which is very English. One of those things is the openness to other cultures, which we'll get into more as we go on in this tour, but also its capitalistic nature, baby. Money. Give me that money. That's what the Dutch kind of almost invented capitalism. Remember, there's all the monarchs and stuff pushing other places in the New World, but the Dutch, man, the Dutch East India Company, Dutch West India Company, those were corporations. They were shareholder based, all that stuff. So that was a new concept. So from the get-go, New York was open, because if you wanted to make money, come here. We're open. If you're going to help us move along, come on in. And also, it was hustling, baby, hustling to make that money. Kind of interesting how that happens. There's a great book. I actually interviewed Russell Shorto in a video as well. He talks about it, called The Island at the Center of the World. I'm plugging someone else's book. Look at me. What a selfless son of a gun. Anyways, I'm rambling. We're going to keep moving here in a second. Keep in mind, too, that slavery was abolished in 1827, which was very late for northern states. Here in New York, it was abolished in 1827. So, you know, New York's got an interesting history. Anyways, that's it. That's it for the intro here. We're going to keep it moving and continue on here in Flatbush. A lot of history to cover, baby. We got to keep it moving. I'm standing like right in front of a school bus. These kids are going to start yelling at me soon, saying I look like a what are they going to, what's a popular insult for the kids these days, Phil? Am I mid? I'm mid?
You're mid, you have no riz.
I have no riz. They're going to say I have no riz. I definitely look sus. All right, let's keep this moving. All right, so as there were farms and people are starting to live here, late 1700s, the town started expanding, adding things like schools. I'm standing in front of Erasmus High School. This is actually the first chartered secondary school in New York history. Phil, guess who two of the backers were? Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. Kind of nuts. In fact, inside, you can't go in because that'd be weird, and I don't think they're gonna let us in, but the actual original clapboard house is in there and it's actually a museum. Pretty nuts. You could just be standing around, you know, vaping, doing what kids do, talking about which teachers are mid or whatever, and you're standing around, you know, like Alexander Hamilton's ghost and stuff. Pretty nuts. Anyways, this high school, very famous in the neighborhood too. A lot of famous alumni. Mae West. You know who Mae West is?
No.
It's Kanye West's great aunt.
Oh, wow.
No, that's not true. That's a lie. She was actually like a 1920 star. She actually went to jail for a play for obscenity because she named a play Sex. Or maybe I should say sex and bleep that out. But also Neil Diamond, Barbra Streisand, huh? You know the famous song that they made, right, Phil?
No.
You don't bring me flowers anymore. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Anyways,
really nice.
Yeah, you're just blowing smoke. So this Erasmus High School, this campus, obviously it looks like a college campus on this because the early 1900s, you got the beautiful like neo-Gothic architecture. But yeah, it was adding to the neighborhood as these farms became more farms in the late 1700s, early 1800s. It started to grow. The building was expanded in the early 1900s after it also started to grow, and we'll talk about that here at our next stop. Interestingly enough, this is also the first high school to ever have wireless telegraphy. You know, telegraph wiring it through. So that was kind of like, you know, pretty big technological advancement. It's also it was named, by the way, named Erasmus after Desiderius Erasmus, who was a very famous Dutch philosopher. You know old Desiderius, right, Phil?
Love that guy.
How could you not know him? Anyways, that's a little bit of background. Farms, expanding. 1800s are coming. What's going to happen? I don't know. Let's find out. Next stop. Okay, so throughout the 1800s, you still had these farms and properties, but as the 1800s kind of went and grew, you had a couple things happen. 1860s, you had Prospect Park finished, huh? We're just south of Prospect Park right now. Oh, and by the way, don't mind me, I'm just kind of relaxing against this post. Yeah, totally casual, no big deal. But as Prospect Park developed, this area starts developing as well. 1875, you have the Flatbush Town Hall built just nearby. It's covered in scaffolding right now, unfortunately, but you get the idea. And then you have developments built up by developers, people who want to provide nice little housing for the upper middle class, etc. And I'm here in one of those areas in Prospect Park South. So not too far from here, you have Albemarle and Kenmore Terraces, which are right near the Dutch Reformed Church. Albemarle Terrace, famous for its neo-federal style houses, which were built in the early 1900s. Neo because it wasn't in the federal style exactly, because federal came around in early 1800s, late 1700s, but federal meaning it had the, you know, Flemish bondwork with the alternating sizes of bricks. You got to be able to point that out. Also the dormers coming out of the roof, the windows. Come on, you got to point this stuff out when you're walking by them to people. It makes you seem smarter. You don't have to quote me. I'll let you get away with it. Also that street, interesting fact, Vitagraph Studios, which was a big movie studio back in the day, owned a lot of those houses and housed a lot of their stars there when they came to shoot movies here in New York, which is pretty cool. You may know Vitagraph Studios from all the classics, like Humpty Dumpty Circus. Have you ever seen Humpty Dumpty Circus, Phil?
Great movie.
Real great movie. I think that was Tobey Maguire's first film.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. But actually, you know, I will say this. I'll watch Humpty Dumpty Circus any day over any of the Marvel superhero movies today. Sorry, I'm going to spin off, rant myself in outer space. Also, Kenmore Place is or Kenmore Terrace, sorry, is a good example of what they call Garden City houses, where the gardens are in the back, they're all connected. And then the front, because they were built in 1919, 1920, you have areas for cars, because cars were already around by that time. So they're kind of like the mullet of houses. Business in the front, party in the back. And probably arrested for DUIs. Here you have all the Victorian architecture, very beautiful house. In fact, right here on Albemarle at 1440, you have what was Michelle Williams's old house. She lived there for a while. You know Michelle Williams, right? From Dawson's Creek. That's the one that's like, I don't want to wait for our lives to be over. You know that one? Was that pretty good? All right. Anyways, right here, 101 Rugby, you also have the house from Sophie's Choice. Sophie's Choice, Phil. That movie where you're left with the terrible decision. You have to choose. Either way you lose. You know, kind of like picking between an iPhone and an Android. All right. Anyways, this is beautiful houses. Oh yeah, all the Victorian. You know, these were all built by a developer in the 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s. Around that time. Take advantage of that sweet park right nearby. You even had the developer who was responsible for a lot of this, giving the streets a kind of fancier names. Things like Westminster and Argyle. Named a street after an outdated fashion style. Because it's right next to Cargo Shorts Place. But, you know, it's kind of the whole thing. They tried to really make this a nice area right near the park. Go figure, we're really walking distance. Would you keep it down back there? Trying to film a video for YouTube. People have no respect for publishing platforms online. Anyways, we're pretty much done here. This is a very beautiful area to walk around. It's a historic district, as you can tell by the brown street signs. You ever around the brown street signs? That's what those mean. And you would contrast these houses to what's east of Flatbush Avenue, which are more row houses and things like that on top of each other. So you have kind of both styles here in Flatbush. Remember, Flatbush is huge. We're going to cover a small part of it, but the further east you go, way further east of Flatbush, there's a lot going on over there too. This is just kind of the fancy styles here, bleeding into Ditmas Park here to the south. So, you know, anyways, we're trying to cover as much as we can. Let's keep it moving. Okay, so as people started to move in, it's blowing windy out here. I don't want to lose this hat. It's fallen into the tracks before, where the train blew it down. I had to get a little grabber thing from one of the MTA guys to pick it out. That's a true story, happened like a week ago. Anyways, I'm digressing. Okay, so as the neighborhood starts to build up, you have the developments going up south of Prospect Park. You have also commercial things kind of sprouting up to cater to this newly developed neighborhood, right? Behind me is one of them. This was built in 1929. It's called King's Theater, built by Rapp and Rapp. It was a Lowe's theater. Lowe's because Marcus Lowe, started the Lowe's franchise of theaters in Cincinnati, and they became a huge thing. In fact, they ended up starting to, the thing you guys might not know is theaters actually would team up with studios back in the day and basically own everything. It was like a monopoly in a way. And this was actually deemed illegal by the Supreme Court in 1948 under what they called the Paramount Decrees, which is why it no longer exists. But Lowe actually combined 3 different studios into one mega studio to serve as his studios, and those were Metro, Goldwyn, and Mayer. Metro, Goldwyn, Mayer, MGM. That was Marcus Lowe. How about that, Phil?
That's a fact I did not know.
No, that's a great fact. But that was one of the things he did, and this was opened in 1929, closed in 1970. Closed in 1977, but then reopened in 2015. Back in the day, Henry Winkler, Sylvester Stallone were actually they were ushers here. They worked here. Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
Hey, yo, let me show you to your seat over here. Hey, huh? That was a pretty good impression, right? But all other things popped up around the time too. So in 1912, actually, they broke ground on what was Ebbets Field. Today, that's no longer there. We would have showed you that, but it's now Ebbets Field Apartments. Very different, big, massive complex of apartments. I think there's a little plaque there as well. But if you took Tilden, which is right here, and went all the way to East Flatbush, you would get to 5224 Tilden, which was the site of Jackie Robinson's house. Yeah, that's right. In 1947, when he was a rookie, they gave him a little house on Tilden as his modest little home. Today that house, still there. They got a plaque on it and everything. The house itself and where it sits now today is worth $1.9 trillion. Pretty crazy how things appreciate. You also have right near here, in 1932 they opened a Sears Roebuck. It's a big, beautiful Art Deco building. In case you don't know, Sears Roebuck was a huge franchise of department stores and catalogs, 3,500 stores at one point. I think there's like 30 in the country now. If you ever see a shopping mall with a Sears in it, don't go there, you'll probably get killed. Oh, a shopping mall, by the way, is a big collection of stores, indoors and stuff. You can go there and eat like the food court and stuff. So there you go. By the way, the Dodgers who played at Ebbets Field got their name because in the early fields that they used to play at, to go into the field, they had to basically dodge trolleys and because there were tracks and stuff out in front of the fields. So their nickname was the Trolley Dodgers. It was the Brooklyn Baseball Club, but all the clubs got their nicknames kind of informally, and it wasn't until later that they were kind of pinned with a mascot and the actual name. Isn't that kind of cool, Phil? Huh? It's good to have whatever nickname ever, and some of them just stuck and some didn't. You know, I could have nicknamed them the and that would have been the name. Who knows? But that's the one that stuck, the Trolley Dodgers. Okay, anyways, so keep in mind, I'm saying early 1900s, this is when Brooklyn was exploding. Remember that. It had just consolidated in 1898, consolidation. Big date in New York history. January 1st, 1898, the 5 boroughs become a thing. Before that, New York City was Manhattan. Brooklyn gets pulled in as a whole city into this new city, mega city, pretty big deal. I mean, imagine if today New York City combined with the 4th largest city in the country, Houston, make a mega city. That'd be a big deal. That's what happened back then. Brooklyn was the 4th largest city in the country. Very important. But Brooklyn exploded in population because of the Brooklyn Bridge, because of consolidation. It doubled its population from the years 1900 to 1950. And that's when all this stuff is going up here in Flatbush. Now, post-World War II, things were going to change, and we're going to talk about that at our next stop. Oh, by the way, we were talking about this earlier at Erasmus High. Barbra Streisand went there. She once said that she would go into, she would one day have her name on the marquee there, and sure enough, she did. Barbra Streisand, you know? You know what she sings, right? Yeah. Memories in the corners of my mind, misty watercolored memories of the way we were.
Sounds good.
That sounded pretty good, right? All right, anyways, let's keep it moving. Next spot, baby, come on. After World War II, you had what was called white flight. I've talked about this in tons of videos, where basically white people were leaving the cities, aided by mortgages that were backed up by the federal government, but that were pretty much denied to minorities to go to suburbs like Long Island, etc., that were pretty much also closed to minorities. So you had neighborhoods like this one pretty much empty out. A neighborhood that in 1950 was mostly white, by 2017 was only 10% white, 60% black, 15% Latin American. So that's kind of crazy how that switch happened so quickly. Now, around the same time, 1965 actually, you had the Hart-Celler Act passed. This basically opened the floodgates of immigration to parts of the world that were pretty much closed off before. So, you know, Latin America, but also the Caribbean. And you had tons of Caribbean immigrants come here, specifically Haiti, West Indies, you had Jamaica, Guyana, Panama, all these different places kind of flood into this neighborhood. In fact, 1/3 of the immigrants were Haitian. So you'll see a lot of different Haitian businesses, and you'll see here, Little Haiti. This is actually named by, or pushed to be named by the city council person here who wanted to kind of commemorate that history. But in addition to that, you have above us, north of us, the Little Caribbean, which was kind of copycat. They did the same thing that they had done here. And there was some bad blood because of it, but you know, whatever, what can you do? What can you do? So just so you know, the Hart-Celler Act was actually passed and signed at the steps, pretty much the steps of the Statue of Liberty over there on Liberty Island. Pretty cool. In 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson sat there and signed it on Liberty Island, which means that, you know, it's got to be a good law. Also means that, you know, if you went to the signing, you probably spent a lot on a hot dog, but it was actually a pretty picturesque moment. So anyways, this neighborhood, like I said, a lot of Haitian influences commemorated in this sign. The street names, for example, named after different Haitian heroes. One of them was Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who was actually a controversial figure, who was one of the leaders of the Haitian Revolution of 1803, 1804, but he was also famous for basically slaughtering thousands of white French after they had taken power. And interesting enough, though, it was part of the war, and people got mad because that's what he did, but they didn't take into account all the stuff, that horrible things that happened to the Haitians prior to that. And it's interesting because the Haitian Revolution is people don't really know a lot about it in the mainstream, and that's for a reason. There's books about this. There's a great one called Silencing the Past that talks about how it's been kind of muffled because it was a successful slave revolt in 1803. The slaves basically rose up and took the country back. So no one here wanted anyone to hear of that because that would have basically riled up the South. So it was very much on the minds of the slave owners and the landowners in the South around that time. This is the 1800s. Remember that? In that book, there's a great quote where the author Trujillo, I'm mispronouncing that, but he says, "You silence history the way you silence a gun." It's a pretty good quote, right, Phil?
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, keep in mind we're east right now of, like I said, of Flatbush Ave, so you have more of the townhouses and things here than you do the Victorian houses over south of Prospect Park. But like in places like the Little Caribbean, it was very much a kind of concern because in the 70s, for example, you had all the brown-stoners in Park Slope. I talked about this in that video. Watch that. But you have the same people, you know, well-to-do, upwardly mobile, you know, young professionals, we'll call them that, or yuppies or whatever, buying up the Victorian houses south of the park, and you know, people wanted to kind of keep it to their own. So, you know, it's very much a concern of gentrification happening, right? Keep in mind that a lot of the people who came over from the Caribbean were coming over because of the instability that was sown by the United States or by the West in the Caribbean. A good example is in the 60s, you had Papa Doc Duvalier in Haiti in power, and before him, 23 of the previous 36 rulers were either overthrown or killed. Those are terrible odds if you're a leader in Haiti, and it's been instability ever since. Obviously, there was an earthquake recently, and so people keep coming, and they keep coming from other parts as well. These kinds of diversity and the richness of neighborhoods like this is something you got to fight to keep in place. As the neighborhoods and the city changes and becomes more expensive, you risk kicking a lot of these people out or displacing the people who've been here for a very long time and have made the neighborhood what it is. So any kind of development and things going forward should take that into account and should be for everyone. The city has to be diverse, I think, by definition. So that's important. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox here in front of a subway station, but yeah, this is pretty cool. We're in Little Haiti here. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Phil? Should we just keep it moving?
Yeah, is there anything else you got to say?
Did I talk a lot?
Yes, you did.
I did? Dear Lord. All right.
It's all information with it.
All right. Well, you didn't have to make me get in my head about it. All right. Let's go to the next spot. Well, look at that, guys. We covered a lot today. We finished it. We made it to the end, baby. Phil, did you learn something? For the love of God, that's the important question.
I learned a lot.
Good. Guys, we covered the Dutch, we covered the farmland, we covered the development, we covered high schools, we covered, you know, frickin' theaters, we covered the Caribbean immigration, we covered Barbara Streisand, huh? Well, I don't know, guys. If you made it this far, come on, go ahead and like and subscribe. Also, check out the Patreon, please. That's how I fund these things. That's how we keep the rotis on our plate. Good Lord. And, you know, you can't do those things, just at least tell a friend or something that let's grow this thing the old-fashioned way, baby, so I don't have to go viral by doing a video on, you know, how New York is dead. You know, I've seen enough of those videos. It ain't dead. There's people here. Come on. But, yeah. Anyways, guys, let's, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm going to take off, get on the subway, and head home. See y'all later.